The shuttle's engines hummed a low, anxious tone as it descended into the dense, violet mist of the planet Xylar 7. Captain Elias Trent adjusted his harness, staring through the viewport at the sprawling, crystalline city below. The structures shimmered like liquid metal, twisting toward the sky in impossible angles, reflecting the faint light of the planet's binary suns. This mission was supposed to be a simple diplomatic retrieval. The United Earth Coalition had discovered intelligent life on Xylar 7 and sent their best negotiator, him, to secure an audience. But as the shuttle breached the atmosphere, Elias felt a familiar twinge of unease. There was nothing in human experience that could prepare him for what awaited. The landing bay opened with a hiss of pressurized air. The moment the hatch slid back, Elias was confronted with beings whose very existence defied biology. They moved like liquid shadows, their forms semi-transparent, glinting faintly with the refracted colors of the crystalline city. But towering above them all was one figure that made his pulse seize, the alien queen. She was monumental, at least 3 meters tall, her body a cascade of luminescent chitin that seemed alive. Eyes, countless of them, pulsed rhythmically along her crown-like headpiece, each one observing, calculating. Elias had read reports describing the Xylarans' telepathic abilities, their capacity to manipulate perception, even the environment itself. But nothing in the briefing had prepared him for her. The shuttle's ramp lowered, and Elias's boots clicked against the polished surface. The Queen's gaze, or what he assumed was her gaze, locked onto him. The other Xylarans fell silent, their forms shimmering in respectful stillness. Elias swallowed hard, forcing a professional demeanor. "I am Captain Elias Trent, of the United Earth Coalition," he announced. His voice sounded hollow in the vast chamber. "I come in peace, seeking dialogue." The Queen tilted her head. In a single movement, fluid and terrifyingly graceful, she gestured. The air itself seemed to bend around her, carrying a sense of command. Elias felt an involuntary pull in his chest, a weight that was not physical but profound, a demand for submission. "Kneel!" A voice resonated, not through sound, but inside his mind. Clear, insistent, undeniable. Elias froze. This was a first contact scenario, not a surrender ritual. He scanned the room. The other Xylarans remained still, as if waiting. Every instinct screamed at him to resist, to assert dominance. But the pressure in his mind grew, urging, insisting, compelling. Before he could think, his knees buckled. He sank slowly to the crystalline floor, bowing his head, utterly powerless to resist. The Queen descended toward him, each step a ripple through the air. Elias noticed the subtle vibrations in the floor as if the planet itself acknowledged her authority. When she stopped a mere meter away, she bent slightly, her multifaceted eyes observing him in a way that made his soul ache. "You are human," she said, her voice both melodic and seismic in its impact. "Yet you yielded without understanding. Why?" I don't know," Elias stammered, feeling a mixture of fear, awe, and something he couldn't define. "I obeyed because you commanded." She circled him slowly, a predator assessing a curious specimen. "Humans are fragile, yet resilient. I expected arrogance, rebellion, even terror. Instead, you kneel." "I'm here to negotiate," he said, voice steadier now. "I'm not your enemy. I don't understand your ways, but I want to find peace." The Queen paused. For a moment, the room was filled with the soft, eerie hum of her presence. Then, to Elias's shock, she reached out, not with claws or appendages, but with a delicate, luminescent tendril that brushed against his shoulder. Warmth spread from the touch, but it carried a weight, an imprint, a communion he couldn't resist. "You feel our truth," she whispered inside his mind, and for the first time, Elias understood. Not just words, but visions. Memories of the Zalarans' rise, their wars against the void, the devastation they endured at the hands of other species. He saw cities burning under alien suns, children of crystal shrieking in anguish, and the long, patient rebuilding that followed. The queen withdrew, leaving him shaken, overwhelmed. "You see not only what we are, but what we endured. Few outsiders can bear it." Elias struggled to his knees again, realizing his earlier submission was nothing compared to this. I understand. I didn't mean to disrespect. You are the first human to kneel willingly," she said, her tone a mixture of curiosity and something he couldn't name. "Most fear us. Some challenge. You accept our presence without question." The chamber shimmered, and suddenly he was no longer alone. Around the queen, projections of Zalaran history materialized: wars, diplomacy, betrayals, triumphs, all flashing around him, immersive and immediate. Elias felt dizzy. Every fiber of his being vibrated with the weight of eons he had never imagined. "You are worthy," the queen said finally, retreating slightly. "Perhaps not by your measure, but by ours. We will allow dialogue." Relief washed over him, but it was mingled with awe. The queen's presence was more than authority. It was an entire civilization embodied in a single form. The first hours of the negotiation were surreal. She spoke in images, impressions, memories, Elias translating internally, struggling to keep pace. He learned of the Zalarans' fragile planetary ecosystem, their telepathic hierarchies, and the delicate balance they maintained with their planet. In turn, he shared humanity's ambitions, fears, and mistakes. The queen listened, absorbing every nuance, her pulsing eyes reflecting comprehension. Then, as if the conversation demanded it, the queen gestured again. The air vibrated, and a smaller chamber unfolded within the larger hall, crystalline walls shifting like flowing water. Elias was led inside, and there he faced the true revelation. She expected him to undergo a ritual, a ceremonial merging of minds. "You will witness what few humans ever see," she intoned. "The trial is voluntary, but it cannot be avoided if trust is to be forged." Elias swallowed, the enormity of the moment pressing down on him. Voluntary, yet compulsory. The contradiction was emblematic of the Zalarans themselves. He nodded, stepping forward. The queen extended her tendrils again. This time, they wrapped around his temples gently, attaching not just physically, but mentally. A torrent of sensation assaulted him. The memory of every Zalaran he had seen, the emotions of the entire species compressed into a moment. He saw the joy of creation, the grief of loss, the intricate dance of politics and survival. Time collapsed. Pain and ecstasy coexisted. And yet, amidst the chaos, he felt a connection, a bridge between human fragility and Zalaran endurance. When it ended, he collapsed to the floor, gasping. The queen knelt beside him, a gesture Elias hadn't anticipated. Not a show of dominance, but an offering of solidarity. "You survived," she said softly, "and you understood. Few can claim both. You are different." Elias felt tears sting his eyes. "I never imagined this. I thought diplomacy was words, but it's understanding. Seeing. Feeling." "Yes," she replied. "You see us now, not as monsters, not as rulers, but as beings. That is the first step toward true peace." Hours later, when he returned to the shuttle, Elias's perception of reality had shifted irrevocably. The Zalarans were no longer alien. They were an extension of the universe's possibilities. He had knelt before their queen not in submission, but in recognition of truth, and it had changed him. Back on the United Earth Coalition command ship, his debriefing was tense. Questions flew. Did she harm you? Did you resist? What concessions did she demand? Elias recounted everything, from the city's impossible geometry to the mental trial he had endured. His superiors were skeptical. Many dismissed it as hallucination, a byproduct of exposure to Xylar 7's atmospheric anomalies. Yet the evidence was undeniable. The recordings of the city, the samples of crystalline matter, the telemetric data from his neural interface. Elias's final report concluded with a single, shocking statement. The alien queen does not demand obedience. She demands understanding. And in that understanding, humanity may find an ally or a mirror. Months later, when trade negotiations officially commenced, Elias found himself seated across from the queen once more. This time, he did not kneel immediately, though he bowed respectfully. She smiled, or at least he interpreted the shift in her pulsing eyes as a smile. You learned well, she said. And yet you are still human. Do you retain your own path? I do, he replied. But I know it is enriched by yours. For the first time, he realized the true meaning of their encounter. The queen's power was not in domination, but in revelation. Humans feared being conquered. She had instead conquered their understanding, offering insight that could reshape the fate of both species. As he left the chamber, Elias glanced back at her, and a thought struck him with clarity. Kneeling before her had not been an act of weakness, nor a surrender of will. It was an acknowledgement that the universe was far larger, stranger, and more magnificent than humanity had ever dared to imagine. And in that acknowledgement, he had found strength beyond measure. The shuttle lifted off, leaving the crystalline city behind, its towers glinting in the twin suns. Elias Trent's mind was forever altered, carrying the weight of a civilization and the promise of a new alliance. He hadn't seen it coming, kneeling before the alien queen, but it had changed everything. And somewhere, in the pulsing rhythm of her consciousness, the queen considered him not just a human, but a worthy participant in the grand story of the cosmos. As the shuttle rose above Xylar 7, Elias Trent finally allowed himself a deep breath. The violet mist of the planet stretched out below him, glittering like a field of stars, and the crystalline city shone with an almost sacred light. He stared at it in silence, still processing everything he had experienced. The queen's overwhelming presence, the mental communion, the visions of a civilization spanning eons. In the weeks that followed, humanity would debate, study, and speculate about his encounter. Some dismissed it as hallucination, others feared the Xylaran's power. But Elias knew the truth. The alien queen had not sought to terrify, to conquer, or to dominate. She had sought understanding. She had shown him a mirror, not of weakness, but of possibility. Months later, the official treaty negotiations began. Representatives from multiple human factions crowded the massive conference hall aboard the United Earth Coalition flagship, anxious to meet the enigmatic rulers of Xylar 7. When Elias entered the chamber, the queen was already present, seated, or rather suspended, in a form that defied any human concept of posture. Her multitude of eyes regarded him as she had that first day. He approached and instinctively bowed, though this time not fully to the ground. The gesture was one of respect, not fear. She responded by inclining her head ever so slightly, a sign of recognition. "You have returned," she said, her voice threading through his mind once more. "Do you carry what you learned?" "I do," Elias replied steadily. "And I bring others to see, to understand. The galaxy is vast. We have more to learn than we know. The queen's tendrils reached out, not to command, but to touch lightly, brushing a shoulder as a reminder of their first meeting. A gentle warmth passed between them, a subtle affirmation of trust. Over the next hours, Elias facilitated discussions that went beyond trade, beyond technology. The humans and the Zalarans shared culture, philosophy, even music, translated through mental resonance. Elias realized something profound. The queen's species measured value not in dominance or conquest, but in the capacity to understand, to empathize, and to adapt. Humanity's future would depend not on weapons or politics, but on insight, the very thing he had received kneeling before her. By the time the negotiations concluded, an alliance had formed, not just a treaty, but a partnership rooted in mutual respect. Humanity would gain knowledge, Xylar, 7 would gain allies. And somewhere, beyond the reach of his understanding, the queen had subtly shifted the trajectory of both civilizations with a single act, the recognition that Elias Trent, a human, was capable of seeing the universe through her eyes. As he left the chamber, Elias glanced back once more. The queen's eyes shimmered, reflecting the twin suns of the alien world. For a brief moment, he felt as though she had looked into him, past his fears, his doubts, and his assumptions, and understood him completely. The shuttle's engines roared to life. Xylar, 7 faded below him, its crystalline towers sparkling like beacons of hope in the violet haze. Elias Trent's heart swelled with a mixture of awe and gratitude. He hadn't expected to kneel before the alien queen. He hadn't expected the revelation that would follow. But now he understood something essential. Strength did not always come from resisting. It sometimes came from yielding, from recognizing something greater than oneself, and from choosing to rise anew, transformed by the experience. And somewhere, in the echo of the queen's presence, he sensed a quiet promise. Humanity was no longer alone in the cosmos, not because it had the power to dominate, but because it had the capacity to understand. Elias leaned back in his seat, staring at the stars beyond the viewport. The universe was larger, stranger, and more beautiful than he had ever imagined. And for the first time in his life, he felt ready to meet it head-on. He hadn't seen this coming, but in kneeling, he had found something far more valuable than victory, far more enduring than fame. He had found a bridge between worlds, between species, and between the limits of human imagination and the vastness of the cosmos. And as Xylar, 7 receded into the distance, Elias Trent knew one truth above all. Sometimes, the greatest revelations arrive when you surrender, not in fear, but in courage, and when you kneel, it's not to submit, it's to awaken.